Mr John Howes.
Thank you, Mr Stringer. There's been too much immigration into this country for too long. And that is certainly the view of the vast majority of the people I speak to in my constituency. And I suspect a widespread view amongst law-abiding, patriotic Britons from all kinds of backgrounds. Three myths have been perpetuated to sustain the level of immigration which we've endured. The first is that it's necessary for our economy, that we need labour. What migration has actually done is to displace investment in domestic skills, to perpetuate a labour-intensive economy at a time that we should have been automating and taking out labour demand, and to feed the greed of those employers who, rather than paying a decent wage for employees that understood their rights, were happy to take cheap labour. Those have been the effect of the arguments about the economy. The second myth has been about multiculturalism. This curious notion that we can absorb all kinds of people into our country without a shared sense of belonging, without a common sense of what being British was all about, and these coexisting subcultures would somehow cohere. In fact, as Trevor Phillips argued long ago, himself, of course, the child of migrants, what we've ended up with is the ghettoisation of large parts, his words, not mine, large parts of our country, with coexisting subcultures without those bonds which bind them together in that shared sense I've described. The third myth is that migration would not have a detrimental effect on some of our public services. Just imagine the figures for a moment. I'm speaking now of legal migration. Between April 2022 and March 2023, the number of people entering Britain was 944,000. 944,000 people extra in a year. And yet, when we debate housing, when we debate transport infrastructure, when we debate health service, the availability of dentists and GPs, we never consider the effect that population growth at that scale has on the demand for all of those services. Of course,
would my right honourable friend give
I will happily give way.
I thank my right honourable friend for giving me way. He's making an extremely eloquent, sweet speech. And of course, we understand that the more people come into our country, the pressures on our public services will be exacerbated. The numbers he quoted are post-Brexit, under his former government. Before Brexit, the net migration, if I remember correctly, and I apologise I forget this wrong, was around 250,000 people coming to our country, most skilled labour or for specific work. After Brexit, the Europeans who had to return, we ended up allowing thousands of people to work in our care sector, in our NHS and in our services industries that were lacking, that had too many vacancies. So how does he explain the policies of his government that led from 250,000 net migration to 900,000+, and what would he do differently today?
Well, the Honourable Gentleman, of course, is right. This is not, the blame for all of this should not be laid exclusively at the hands of the Labour Party or Labour governments. Successive governments have administered a regime which has been out of tune with the sentiments of the vast majority of the population, who know what I've said is true. And he's right to say, too, that those successive governments have allowed unsustainable levels of net migration. If you look at the history, however, it was quite different. In 1967, net migration was minus 84,000. In 1987, net migration was just 2,000. In 1997, it was 48,000. It's in my time in this House, although I hasten to add, not at my behest, Mr. Stringer, that migration has soared, and we have begun to accept that hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people can be added to our population without taking account of the fact that that brings additional pressure on public service. Now, not to say that many of those people don't make a positive contribution to our country. Of course they do, in all kinds of ways. But simply in terms of the growth in demand of, for example, housing, to ignore these facts is a dereliction of duty, which politicians across the political spectrum are guilty of. I give way again.
Thank the honourable member for giving way. Would you agree with me just on the issue of population change? It would appear that in the past 25 years, the population of the United Kingdom has increased by over 10 million, while our economy has been largely stagnant. So does he not agree with me that most people agree there's a distinct difference between those who come from across the world to contribute to our society, to pay their taxes, to help the NHS and work like that, and a distinction between them and those who come illegally? And that's a distinction that is often lost in this debate.
Well, illegal migration, of course, is of different order. Illegal migration is about breaching borders. A nation means very little unless it has territorial integrity. What is the purpose of a nation which has porous borders? Indeed, it barely deserves to be described as such. And he's right to say that the way that our borders have been breached with impunity over time, and bear in mind that 9 out of 10 of those people who arrive in dinghies are men, and 75% are under the age of 40. Let's be clear about who's coming and for what purpose. Many are economic migrants, and frankly, given where they come from, if you came from those places, you might come too, because you see a better life here, and you want that life, your family. I don't criticise the individuals, I criticise a system that permits that level of illegal migration. But legal migration matters too because of its scale and its character. It has led to a change in our society at a pace which many people find it impossible to comprehend, still less to cope with. So it's time that the political establishment, populated it is by the liberal bourgeoisie, faced up, not the honourable gentleman, of course, I accept him from that general description, face up to the fact that what they have perpetuated for too long is at odds with both the intuition, the experience and the will of the British people. We need to cut migration of all kinds, and we need to cut it now, or they will dispense with us and elect people who will.